Hi, I'm Janet, a 27-year-old PR manager at Wallace & Partners, one of Chicago's top advertising firms. Life has been a roller coaster, especially since my dad decided to remarry when I was 15. That's when everything changed, and not necessarily for the better. Sweetie, I think you'll really like Margaret. She's different from the other women I've dated, Dad said, trying to reassure me before their wedding. I wanted to believe him, I really did. Margaret seemed nice enough. But her daughter, Catherine? That was an entirely different story. I threw myself into independence as soon as I could. Moving out of the family home at 18 was my first taste of real freedom. I got my own small apartment in downtown Chicago. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Dad helped me move, while Catherine stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. Must be nice having Daddy support you all the time, she said, flashing that fake smile of hers. I worked 3 jobs through college to afford this, I snapped back, but she had already walked away. 2 years ago, everything changed when I met Martin Phillips. It was just another client meeting, a presentation on a marketing strategy for his software company. I love how you break down complex tech into something anyone can understand, he said after my presentation. Well, I love how you didn't fall asleep during my PowerPoint, I joked. His laugh was genuine, and something clicked. Would you like to grab coffee sometime to discuss the campaign? He asked, trying to sound professional. I'd love to discuss the campaign, I replied, though we both knew it wasn't just about work. Our first date turned into weekly dinners, then daily phone calls. Before I knew it, we were planning a future together. Martin's proposal at Lakeside Restaurant, my favorite spot in Chicago, was like something out of a dream. Janet Anderson, you've turned my world upside down in the best way possible, he said, getting down on one knee. Will you marry me? I couldn't say yes fast enough. Dad was thrilled. My baby girl's getting married, he exclaimed, pulling me into a tight hug. Margaret smiled politely, but Catherine rolled her eyes. Congrats, sis, she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Hope this one works out better than your college boyfriend. I've always tried to keep the peace at family gatherings, usually held at Dad and Margaret's house every other Sunday. Janet, honey, you've barely touched your food, Dad would say, always noticing how tense these dinners made me. Just busy with work, Dad, I'd reply, avoiding Catherine's smirking gaze across the table. Martin has been my rock through it all. You don't have to put up with her attitude, he told me one night after an especially strained dinner. She's family, technically, I sighed. Besides, I've worked too hard to let her drama derail my life. But Catherine's drama had a way of creeping into my life anyway. You'll never guess who just got hired at First National. My best friend Patricia texted me one morning. I nearly choked on my coffee when she followed up. Catherine, the same bank that handled all my company accounts. This can't be a coincidence, I told Martin over dinner. She's applied to 3 places I have connections. Maybe she's just trying to what? Ruin everything like she did at Marshall & Co. I interrupted, flashing back to the nightmare of missing emails and lost client contacts when we briefly worked together 2 years ago. My phone buzzed with a text from Grandma Rose. Sweetheart, I know times are tough, but I need that $5,000 back soon. What money? I called her immediately. Catherine said, oh dear, maybe I'm confused again, Grandma stammered. The next day at work, my assistant Jackie rushed into my office. The Thompson account transfer failed again. The bank says there's a hold on the transaction. For the 3rd time this month, I muttered, already dialing the bank. First National Bank, Catherine speaking. How can I help you? I hung up immediately and called the branch manager instead. Later that week, during engagement party planning at Dad's house, I caught Catherine scrolling on her phone with a smug grin. While I was showing Mom my venue ideas, Catherine sauntered over, smirking. Oh, by the way, she chimed in, isn't that the same place where your ex had his engagement party? You know, the one who dumped you for his secretary? That never happened, I snapped. I've never even been engaged before. Really? That's not what you told Aunt Carol at Christmas, Catherine said innocently, her fake smile firmly in place. Mom looked confused. Carol wasn't even at Christmas dinner, I pointed out, steering the conversation in another direction. Remember when Martin and I first met? Catherine's smirk faded, but I kept going. She actually tried to ask him out right after our first date. That's not true, Catherine protested. I was just being friendly. Besides, everyone knows how you love playing the victim. Later that evening, I was reviewing my client files when something odd caught my attention. Martin, I called, motioning for him to come over. Look at these transaction dates. Every delayed payment, every system error. It all started after Catherine began working at the bank. Have you documented everything? Martin asked, shifting into lawyer mode. Every single incident, I replied. But it's not just work. Look at these texts from family members. I showed him a series of messages, all referencing conversations I'd never had, promises I'd never made, and money I'd supposedly borrowed. She's been playing a long game, Martin said, scrolling through the evidence, turning your family against you and sabotaging your career. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with another text. This time, it was from my cousin Rachel. How could you tell everyone about my husband's rehab stay? That was private. I began typing a reply, then stopped. What was the point? Catherine had spent years weaving this web of lies, and now I was stuck in the middle of it. The engagement party is in 2 weeks, Martin reminded me gently. Maybe we should consider changing venues. No, I said firmly. I'm done letting her control my life. Let her try something this time. I'll be ready. Little did I know how far Catherine would go to ruin my special day. This is officially the best day of my life, I whispered to Martin as we greeted guests in my father's elegant garden. The spring air was crisp, and everything looked magical. Miss Anderson, a stern voice interrupted. I turned to see 2 police officers standing at the garden entrance, holding papers. We have a warrant to search the premises, one of them said. My heart stopped. There must be some mistake. We received a report about stolen jewelry valued at $50,000. Your grandmother's heirloom collection, the officer explained. Catherine stood behind them, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Fake tears. I didn't want to believe it, she sniffed. But when Grandma told me her jewelry was missing. What? I haven't even been in Grandma's room. My voice cracked as I glanced at Martin's investors huddling together, whispering. Let's take this inside, Dad suggested, his face ashen. The theft reportedly occurred during last Sunday's dinner, the officer continued. That's impossible, Maria, our housekeeper of 20 years, interrupted from the doorway. Stay out of this, Maria, Catherine snapped. No, I won't. Maria stood taller, her voice firm. Officers, you need to see something. She led everyone to the recently added security room. After a break-in last year, Dad had installed security cameras throughout the house. Maria led the officers to the recently added security room and pulled up the footage from Tuesday morning. Watch this, she said, pressing play. The screen showed Catherine entering my old bedroom carrying a familiar velvet box. 10 minutes later, she emerged empty-handed. That's not what it looks like, Catherine stammered, her confidence cracking. Keep watching, Maria said firmly. The next clip showed Catherine in the garden, phone in hand. Yes, I'm sure. Plan the idea about the missing jewelry when you visit Grandma Rose today, she whispered. She's been forgetful lately. Dad's face turned red with anger. Catherine, what have you done? She's lying, Catherine shouted, pointing at Maria. She edited that footage. The timestamps are encrypted, one officer said after examining the system. These clips haven't been altered. I can explain, Catherine began, but Dad cut her off. Enough. First, the missing emails at your old job, then Janet's client accounts at the bank, and now this. Mr. Anderson, the second officer interjected, would you like to press charges for filing a false police report? Dad looked at Catherine, years of denial finally crumbling. Yes, I would. Daddy, please, Catherine wailed. She's not even your real daughter. The room fell silent. Then Maria stepped forward, her voice calm but resolute. There's more, she said, pulling a stack of papers from her bag. When I was cleaning last week, I found these in Catherine's desk. She handed over a pile of documents, copies of transactions, email exchanges, and a detailed timeline of Catherine's sabotage. Catherine lunged for the papers, but the officers held her back. You had no right to go through my things, she screamed. Later that evening, Martin and I sat in the quiet garden. He squeezed my hand. You okay? He asked softly. Actually, yes, I said, a weight lifting from my chest. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. 3 months after the engagement party, Catherine's schemes unraveled spectacularly. "Have you seen this?" Patricia announced, dropping a newspaper on my desk. The headline read, "Bank employee arrested in major fraud scheme." The audit revealed everything, I told Martin over dinner. She'd been stealing from elderly clients' accounts for months. Grandma Rose wasn't her only victim. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Turn on Channel 5 now." The news anchor's voice filled the room. "Former Marshall & Co. employee arrested for selling company secrets." Sources say the investigation began after an incident at a family engagement party. "Karma really said, 'Hold my beer,'" Martin joked. The next morning, Mom called me, her voice shaking with tears. "Janet," she sobbed, "I found Catherine's diary. She documented everything. Every lie, every scheme. She even wrote about sabotaging your college scholarship interview by calling in a bomb threat." My breath hitched. The scholarship I lost. That forced me to work 3 jobs through college. "I'm so sorry," Mom whispered. "I should have seen it. We all should have." Weeks later, I stood in court, watching as Catherine faced sentencing. 8 years for financial fraud, plus 3 for corporate espionage, the judge declared. Her banking license was permanently revoked. How does the defendant plead? "Guilty," Catherine whispered, her voice breaking for the first time. That evening, I found a letter in my mailbox. "Dear Janet, I failed you as a stepmother. I enabled Catherine's behavior, making excuses when I should have seen the truth. Watching you rise above her cruelty while she chose darkness has opened my eyes. I understand if you can't forgive me, but I needed you to know I'm truly sorry. Margaret." 6 months later, I walked down the aisle in my dream wedding dress. No drama, no schemes, just pure joy. Martin's investors had doubled their support, making his startup Chicago's newest tech success. During the reception, Dad pulled me aside. "You know what Catherine said at her sentencing?" he asked. "What?" "She said, 'I had everything, but I couldn't stand that Janet had more.' She never understood that what you had was earned, not given." I looked around at my real family, Patricia twirling on the dance floor, Maria dabbing happy tears, Grandma Rose beaming with pride, and Martin, my rock through it all. Martin leaned in, ready to start our drama-free life. "Actually," I said with a smile, "I'm thinking of starting a support group, helping others spot toxic family members before it's too late." He grinned. "That's my girl, always turning poison into medicine." How would you have handled discovering your stepsister was sabotaging your career and manipulating your family? Share your thoughts below. Hi, I'm Jennifer. At 32, I'd worked hard to climb the corporate ladder and was proud to call myself an executive at one of Chicago's top marketing firms, earning $195,000 a year. Life was good, until I met Frank Henderson at a real estate conference. "You're the most driven woman I've ever met," he'd say, flashing that dazzling smile that made me forget all my doubts. We got married after a year of dating, and I thought my life couldn't get any better. That's when I met them, Frank's 5 sisters, all divorced and raising kids. At first, they were just scattered voices at family gatherings. "My ex is such a deadbeat," Laura would complain, her 2 kids leaving sticky fingerprints all over my freshly decorated living room. "At least yours pays child support," Barbara would chime in, bouncing a fussy toddler on her hip. They'd smile at me and say, "You're so lucky to have such a successful career, Jennifer." But behind those words, their eyes betrayed something else. Envy, resentment, maybe both. My best friend Kate was the first to notice the cracks. Over lunch one day, she leaned in, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "Why does Frank need access to your personal savings? You already have a joint account." I waved her off. "He's just helping manage our finances better." But things started to shift. Subtly at first. "Babe, you should be home earlier," Frank would say. Laura needed help with her kids' homework today. Then it became a constant refrain. "Family takes care of family, Jennifer. The girls need our support right now." One night, while sorting through bills, I saw a $500 transferred to Barbara's account. "She needed help with rent," Frank said casually. "We can't let her and the kid end up on the street." "That's the 3rd time this month." I snapped. "Are you saying my family isn't worth helping?" His voice turned sharp. "You make good money, Jennifer. We should share our blessings." I wanted to believe him, to see his concern as love, but the calls, visits, and financial demands kept piling up. I started to feel more like a human ATM than a sister-in-law. Things escalated one night over dinner. I found the perfect houses for all the girls, Frank announced, within 2 blocks of us. Isn't that great? I nearly choked on my wine. All of them? How can they afford that? Don't worry about it. I worked out a deal through my real estate connections. Within a month, they all moved in. That's when my nightmare truly began. Jennifer, can you watch the kids? I have a job interview. Laura would text at 7 o'clock a.m. Emergency, can you pick up the kids from school? Rachel would call during my meetings. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to find Barbara cooking breakfast. Frank gave me a key for emergencies, she said with a grin. I confronted Frank that evening. This is getting out of hand. I can't focus on work with all this chaos. Maybe that's for the best, he replied coldly. The kids need a proper aunt figure. You make enough money for all of us anyway. All of us? My voice shook. It all unraveled from there. My savings had been drained through multiple family support transfers. Frank had used my credit cards to furnish his sister's homes. When I confronted him, his charming mask slipped. You're part of this family now, he growled. Stop acting like some stuck-up princess. The final blow came during a major presentation at work. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Emergency, Maria's kids are sick. You need to come home now. Panicked, I left mid-presentation, only to find Maria lounging on my couch. Oh, they're fine now, she said, smirking. That night, Frank dropped the bomb. You need to quit your job. The girls need help with the kids. Absolutely not, I shot back. His face twisted into something unrecognizable. You ungrateful witch. After everything I've done for you. Done for me? I screamed. You've stolen my savings and ruined my life. It's called sharing, Jennifer. You wouldn't understand with your career-first attitude. What kind of woman are you? In tears, I called Kate that night. Something's not right, she said firmly. This isn't love, it's control. Start documenting everything and keep any evidence you can. My once pristine home had turned into a chaotic daycare. My career was barely hanging on. I had anxiety attacks in bathroom stalls, my boss asking if everything was okay. Just family stuff, I lied. But it wasn't just family stuff. It was the systematic destruction of everything I'd built. My independence, my career, my sanity, all sacrificed on the altar of Frank's family-first manipulation. I didn't know it then, but Frank was playing a much bigger game. The houses, the money, the constant chaos. It was all part of a grander scheme, one that would soon blow up in all our faces. Everything unraveled late one sleepless night. On a hunch, I decided to dig deeper into our financial records. What I found made my blood run cold. Wait, what's this loan document with my signature? I never signed for a $50,000 loan. The more I searched, the worse it got. While Frank was out showing houses, I scoured his home office, uncovering bank statements, loan documents, and client contracts. Together, they painted a chilling picture of an elaborate real estate scam. Then came the text. My phone buzzed with a message from Karen, clearly sent by mistake. Isabel is such a fool. Can't believe she hasn't figured out what we're doing with the house deposits yet. Another ping. This time from Rachel. Frank says once everything falls apart, she'll take the blame since her name's on the documents. My hands trembled as nausea hit me like a wave. I called Kate, choking on my words. Don't react, she instructed. Meet me at the coffee shop across from my office. Now. At the cafe, I showed her everything. Look at these loan documents, that's not my signature. And these client deposits, they're going straight into personal accounts. Kate's face darkened. This is major fraud, Jennifer, and they're setting you up to take the fall. That evening, I overheard the sisters in my kitchen, their voices dripping with mockery. Poor Jennifer. So career-obsessed, she doesn't even notice what's happening in her own house. Remember when she actually believed we needed childcare? Rachel snickered. As if we couldn't afford nannies with all this cash flowing in. I stepped into view and their fake smiles froze on their faces. Oh, Jennifer, we were just. Save it, I said flatly, disgusted. Later that night, I confronted Frank with the evidence. You forged my signature. You're stealing client deposits. This is fraud. His response chilled me to the core. Listen carefully, he hissed. One word to anyone and you'll regret it. Besides, whose name is on all those documents? Not mine. Everything I've done was for family, he spat. You're just collateral damage. I acted scared, submissive, but inside, I was done. The next day, during a family gathering, I overheard Maria on the phone. Yeah, the perfect setup. Frank made sure Jennifer's name is on everything. When it all crashes, she'll take the fall. Poor workaholic wife, secretly stealing from clients to support her husband's struggling sisters. Laura chimed in, laughing. The best part? She actually thinks she's helping family. Wait till she finds out we've been living off client deposits this whole time. I slipped away to call Kate. It's worse than we thought, I whispered. They're running a full-scale fraud operation, and I'm their scapegoat. I've been documenting everything, Kate replied, her tone resolute. But we need to move fast. They're getting sloppy, which means they're close to their endgame. That night, I lay in bed next to Frank, my heart racing. The man I married was a stranger. His sisters weren't victims. They were accomplices. And I was their perfect patsy, the successful career woman primed to take the fall. But they didn't know one thing. I had a plan of my own. The morning I executed my escape plan started like any other. Don't forget, Laura's kids need picking up at 3, Frank reminded me, his voice casual. Of course, honey, I said with a smile. Little did he know, I'd never be doing their school runs again. I had spent weeks secretly copying every incriminating document, recording conversations on my phone. The day before, I'd accepted a VP position at a marketing firm in Boston, an upgrade from my current role and 1,000 miles away from this chaos. Meeting Kate at her law firm, we put the final pieces in place. The fraud investigators have everything they need, she confirmed. They'll move once you're safely away. And the restraining order? I asked, my voice wavering. With the evidence of his threats. I had just finished clearing out my office when my phone exploded with notifications. You backstabbing witch, Frank's text read. The real estate board just showed up. A message from Laura followed. How dare you? They're investigating our benefits. I blocked them all and boarded my flight to Boston. Within weeks, everything imploded. Kate kept me updated. Frank's biggest clients are suing for millions, she said during one call. And the sisters' welfare fraud got exposed during the investigation. They're all being evicted. I settled into my new apartment overlooking the Boston Harbor. My new job valued my expertise, and for the first time in years, I felt free. Then the desperate calls started. Baby, please, I can explain everything. I'll change. Jennifer, we're family. We made mistakes, but we need you. I sent all the calls to voicemail. Months later, I read about Frank losing his real estate license. His sisters, no longer able to coast on fraud and welfare, had to find actual jobs. Frank faced tax evasion charges that would keep him occupied for years. Kate called one afternoon. Your divorce is final, she said triumphantly. And guess what? Frank just got served with federal tax evasion charges. And the sisters? I asked. Working minimum wage jobs. Turns out, fraud doesn't look good on our resume. With part of my new salary, I launched a foundation to help women recognize and escape financial abuse. During our first meeting, I shared my story. I thought I was alone, one woman said, tears in her eyes. Thank you for showing us there's a way out. Last week, I received a letter from Maria. We're truly sorry, we were horrible people. Please forgive us. I dropped it in the shredder without responding. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Kate. Just drove past your old house. For sale by bank sign up. Karma's really doing her thing. Standing by my window, watching the sunset over Boston Harbor, I smiled. My new life was everything I had worked for, and more. No toxic family, no manipulation, no drama. Just me, my career, and my freedom. Justice doesn't always need revenge. Sometimes it just needs time and truth. To all the women trapped in toxic families and relationships, I want you to know this. There's always a way out. Be smart, be brave, and most importantly, be ready to choose yourself.